Check 1, 2. Doing a little bit of a mic check adjustment. How's everybody doing tonight? Loud and clear. I'm getting loud and clear. Fired up. Alrighty. How we doing tonight, guys? Let me know if you can see me clearly, hear me clearly. Make sure there's no boxes or squares, rectangles, anything around my face so I can shut it off. And then we'll get into what we got going on tonight. We got a lot going on. The world's gone just a little bit crazier over fuel. Now, we're used to long fuel lines here in Florida for hurricanes. No one's prepared for this one, I guess. And they don't realize that most of the fuel that we consume in South Florida doesn't come through the pipelines at all that are affected. They come from the port, which are boats, and they get delivered out of Houston, in most cases through the Gulf. So we're probably not going to run out of fuel. But they don't care. It's just mass hysteria. There's lines everywhere. I literally left here today. I'm like, all right, I'll get fuel on the way home. I'm going to check on my dogs, all that fun stuff. And the lines are wrapped around the streets. Gas stations are out of fuel. I have 1 mile to E right now. I can't drive home. I literally can't drive. I'm blown away by the hysteria. It's dumbfounding. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Tonight's going to suck because the wife's got to come pick me up. I got to go fill her car up with fuel, probably wait 2 hours in line somewhere for that because she needs to drive. She got an hour drive all the way to work and back, so she has to have fuel for sure. Then I got to take a 5-gallon jug with me, look like the guy who's hoarding fuel so I can put some fuel in my truck and then go get back in line. I'll probably wake up at like 2 o'clock tomorrow morning and go get fuel somewhere. Oh, God, that's annoying. And my dog wasn't feeling well when I got home. So that's all what's going on in the world of Frank right now. Plenty of stuff going on. We're going to talk about what's going on in the Godzilla Swap world. Now, we haven't done anything really Godzilla Swap specific since we kind of did the general introduction to the engine, what was out then. We're going to go over what has developed, what I've seen develop, and you guys may be able to tell me more about what's going on because there's a lot of stuff with the Godzilla that's happening in small doses. And I would say small shops, similar to who we were, right? When we got involved with the Coyote swaps and we weren't a manufacturer and all of a sudden we had a accessory drive kit. And like, who the hell are these guys? They're not March, they're not MMR, they're not all these companies. Now I got to trust these guys. Are they going to be a flake? Well, we're not a flake. And all those companies out there that are putting their best foot forward, making components for the Godzilla engines, I'm trying to keep in contact with them because if we get in to the Godzilla engine market and these are the products that you guys want, then they're going to be the companies that need to supply us as well until we finally come out with stuff and see where our spot in the market's going to be. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to answer any questions you guys have about Coyote swaps. Basically just see what's going on in the world, talk a little bit more about it. It's just crazy right now. I'm flabbergasted. I'm almost off song. I'm like weirded out how crazy it is out there right now. So anyway, if you're new to the show, obviously that little rant there isn't normal, but my name is Frank Perdomo. I work here at Power by the Hour Performance. We are Coyote swap specialists. We're dabbling into the Godzilla swaps as well, 6R80 and 10R80 specials as well. We seem to be Ford Racing, Ford Performance Tech Department Junior. So when they don't answer the phone, we do, and we help you out with that kind of stuff. And this show is part of that support as well. You'll see on the bottom left, bottom left of the screen there. Oh, over here, RPM Act. There we go, RPM Act. You got to make sure you click on that link or Google it. I got to put in the link in the description. I haven't set that up yet, but find it, sign it. It's the only tool we have right now to try to work to make sure that the EPA does not shut down a lot of the vital, a lot of the vital ways that we do business in the performance world. Racing is one of those. Racing is how we get off-road products to give us the ability to do whatever we want with the cars, and the EPA is trying to kind of stem that. So we need to make sure that we have the freedom to do what we want to do to our cars. However that ends up being, whatever the gray area is, whatever the ruling is or whatnot, we need rules. We need to know what's allowed and what's not allowed, not just some blanket stroke saying that, well, you just can't do shit with your car. You know, it had cats on it in 1993, and because you put a Coyote engine in it, well, now you're in violation. Whoever sold you those parts is in violation too, and guess what? Now they're going to be fined so hard they're out of business. That's what we're talking about. So make sure you support the RPM Act. Make sure you reach out to your local government, your bigger government, and make sure they know that your vote is in support of that, so that they get on their horse and say, hey, I need your vote, and I support it as well. Power by the Hour Performances in West Palm Beach, Florida. We are right at the end of the airstrip at Palm Beach International Airport. We are available to you on the phones Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 Eastern, 561-737-2331. You can also email us, info@pbhperformance.com, info@pbhperformance.com. Then my direct email is frank@pbhperformance.com. When you call us, you will probably end up with either one of the four of us. That's Frank Pezzo, Christian Papa, Travis Dean, and myself. And we can definitely help you out with anything you need. We are on social media as well, Facebook and Instagram. And naturally, as you know, we're on YouTube. YouTube, obviously, we're going to ask you to subscribe. We're going to ask you to hit the notification bell and click all. We're going to ask you to comment. We're going to ask you to like this video and share it. All that stuff, because that's what helps us grow the channel. We're getting very, very close in some of the social media outlets like Instagram. We're almost at 10,000 followers. Once we hit 10,000 followers, we can actually add links to our videos, which would definitely help us promote the show. So if you haven't followed us on Instagram, please go do that. It's PBH Performance. You can also search our hashtag, which is hashtag PBH Equipped. If you have a product on your vehicle and you're posting about it, please add it to the hashtag so we can find you and potentially show your vehicle off on the show live here, just like the chat room. So we'll get into some introductions and say hello to some people that have been so gracious to be in the chat room early. Jaime's Garage, what's going on, brother? He's here for the early bird meeting, he says. Eric Copeland came in second. What's going on? Joe Leslie, Jordan Dunning, Wild Horse 50 with the Spanish lesson says, Hoy solo hablo español, es broma, no hablo español. Which means, hey, all I speak is Spanish. Just kidding, I don't speak Spanish. And I responded with orale. Let's see here. Coyote IS300. Hola, Wild Horse 50. Hoy sí, vamos a hablar español. Well, apparently, las papas fritas, which is probably the only thing everyone remembered from Spanish class, which is French fries. It's going to be important to you guys tonight. Alfredo Diaz, how we doing, brother? Fermin Jr., 89. Fox Yodi, what's up? Drunk motherfucker. Yeah, some... He says in North Carolina he's got the same thing going on. I think you guys are in a little bit more of a world of hurt there because the pipeline runs right through North Carolina, it looks like, but I'm not sure. It could all be bullshit. Like, the end of the week, we might be back to normal, but right now, I may have to Uber home, which is ridiculous. And I got a roof going on in my house right now, so I got like 20 grand on the hook. I got this going on. My dog's having seizures. You know what? I know it's going to help just a little bit, and it really shouldn't, but I think I'm going to have a beer. I think tonight I'm going to drink this Funky Buddha Floridian, which is, oh, Floridians, I love you. There's so many, there's 330,000 new Floridians. They're coming from Texas, California, New York, and every state around the Great Lakes. Welcome to the state. Hopefully you've migrated and not invaded. But this is a Funky Buddha Floridian Hefeweizen. Very nice. Cheers. And tonight, I know there's someone out there, I forget who it is, who's a Flanagan's fan. I got my Flanagan's koozie, which once you put a can of beer in here, it literally, you need a pry bar to get it out. So we'll keep the beer cold tonight with my Flanagan's koozie. Flanagan's gets a free plug from PBH. Very nice. So let's see what else we got going on. Alfredo Diaz, I think we saw you. Wild Horse 50. Jaime. Zach Anderson, what's up, what's up, what's up? Jason Friedberg, how we doing? Peter Kepke, Cope. Kopka. How we doing tonight? Thanks for joining us. Gabe Sanders. Gabe chiming in with, at least we got poop paper. Yep. And if inflation keeps going that way, we could use money. So, Arthur hitting with a tech question. We'll get to that in a second, brother. Eric Copeland, Celine Gaming, how we doing? Bobby Wortman back in the house. All right, so that looks like it's everybody. I didn't go on Instagram to tell everybody we're live. I may have to do that while we're live on here. Let's just leave it alone. Tonight we'll just cover stuff that we're going to be covering. It'll be us and the other 30 of you will be talking tonight. It'll be very intimate tonight. Like click around on my screen. All right, so we're going to be talking about Godzilla stuff here in a second. I'm going to reiterate some of the product announcements we made over the last 2 weeks and reintroduce you to that stuff in case you missed it and didn't know about it. But we did come out with a new composite oil pan delete kit. So Gen 3 Coyotes have a composite oil pan, holds 10 quarts. There's nothing wrong with that design. But if it doesn't fit your suspension and you can't modify the composite, one of the options you have is naturally to change the oil pan and go to an aftermarket one, which could be upwards of $800, $900, which we'll be talking about expensive oil pans here in a second because of Godzilla stuff. But the other option is to go to an earlier stock pan from the Generation 1 or 2 Mustangs. You can't do that easily because the Generation 3 composite oil pan has the pickup tube part of it. The oil pump's different, and it doesn't have any of the studs in the main cap bolts to fasten a pickup tube. So we devised a custom pickup tube that allows you to use all the stock equipment, and you don't have to change the oil pump. It's about $350, and here's a quick picture of it. This is the modified pickup tube. This is all the hardware it comes with. You're going to get 2 studded main cap bolts, a hex spacer, the bolts, all the nuts, oil pan bolts, all that fun stuff. You're going to get a factory oil pan. You're going to get a factory oil pan gasket that we modify so you don't have to do anything to it when you go to install it. And at the bottom of the screen, you see the modified oil pump pickup. It is bone stock, modified end, so it works with the Gen 3 oil pump. It really takes the guesswork out of doing stuff. Now, the other thing we're going to remind you of is our oil pressure sender. I already got a few orders for this. A lot of interest in it. We have an oil pressure sender adapter that's going to allow you to use it on every generation that's currently available that we know of. So Gen 1 and 2, they're the same. And actually in Gen 1 and 2, you really don't need the factory sensor. But in Generation 3, you definitely have to have the sensor. And then to throw us a little bit extra curveball, Ford changed the thread pitch on the sensor, changed the sensor itself. And you got to have that sensor in play in Gen 3. So Gen 3, guys, is the most important. For guys who are building cars on a regular basis, this is a nice little part to have on the shelf or to know that you can get. And it doesn't matter what engine they bring you, whether it's a Voodoo, a Gen 3, a Gen 1, 2, F-150, or Mustang engine. Remember, some of the Gen 2 F-150 engines had the Gen 3 oil pressure sender in them. So think of that. So if you buy the sensor and you don't know which one you have, it doesn't matter because it can be assembled any which way you want to work with the factory oil filter housing or an oil filter relocation bracket, whatever they call it, the adapter that goes on the block to get rid of the factory oil filter housing. We're going to have some elbows and adapters to help work with those as well. So not only does it allow you to retain your oil pressure sender, it allows you to add other sensors down there or feed turbo systems or other components that need oil pressure. So I'll show you a quick picture of this. This is being made here in the United States. It is a PBH exclusive product. It's going to be about $45. The body of it's aluminum. The threaded piece is stainless steel. It is made to our specs and our specs specifically. No one else makes one like this. There's other ones out there. They're different. They're more money. They have different features. This one is ours. This is how we're going to do it. You can basically thread it in with one or the other thread pitches for your factory sensor. The body of the housing then threads on the other side, and voila, you got 2 1/8-inch MPT ports for aftermarket senders, and then you have a spot for your factory one. If you don't have to use your factory one, and the other sensor has the same thread pitch, you can put it on the end, and then still have 2 1/8-inch MPT ports to play with. Very nice, and it works on Generation 1, 2, 3, F-150 and Mustang engines, Voodoo engines as well. And pretty much anything that has the same thread pitch as a Coyote oil pressure sender. So keep that all in mind. Whoop, wrong one. There you go. So keep that all in mind, because if you have another engine or something modular that has the same oil pressure sender, you need something trick to use it and get some oil pressure out, then this is a good option. We're going to have that in about 2 weeks here at PBH. We'll do a video on it, show the installation options, and give you some directions on it. We also are going to be releasing a kit probably end of this week, next week, and we'll talk about it a little bit more next show. It's for guys who are wanting to trigger their cooling fan by their air conditioning. Now, the concept is really simple, and you don't really have to buy our components to do it, but we're going to come up with a kit because enough guys ask about it and they just want the parts. So, control packs, all the control packs. You have a trigger wire that comes out, the computer triggers the cooling fan with, right? And you're going to be running that. It has a 40 amp relay and a 30 amp fuse or something like that in the fuse panel. So if you have an aftermarket fan like a Spall or a Meridyne or something like that doesn't draw a whole lot of voltage, amperage, whatever, you can run it off of that and power it no problem. If you have 2 fans, then you're probably going to want to use battery power, locally ground it, use a continuous duty solenoid, and then trigger the fans to turn on at the same time. Well, if you try to do that without the air conditioning involved, no big deal. You got the one trigger wire, just figure out your power, figure out your ground, and wire it up. Really no magic to it, right? But if you want the fans to come on, let's say before the computer says it's time to turn on. Let's say you want the fans to turn on so your air conditioning condenser doesn't get screaming hot at a standstill, then you want the fans to turn on when you trigger the AC. So, if you try to jump the same terminal with the power from the AC circuit and it's connected to the control pack circuit, you start backfeeding the control pack and things go bad. Well, the way you're going to get around that with this kit is we're going to supply you a continuous duty solenoid, the ones that are waterproof that we've been offering for high amp draw. And that's going to get power, it's going to get ground, it's going to get your triggers on the same pole, right? And then it'll have a trigger wire that comes out and goes to the fans. Or both fans, or one fan, or whatever. But then we're also going to give you an inline fuse holder with a one-way diode. So what that does for you is, as the wire comes from the control pack to connect to the pole on the continuous duty solenoid, that's where the fuse holder is going to be. There's going to be a one-way, there's literally an arrow on the diode telling you which way the power you want the power to go. And you're going to make sure it flows to the continuous duty solenoid. That way when you turn your AC on, it doesn't backfeed the control pack and things go bad. So we will have a kit for that. It'll probably be 60, 70 bucks, something along those lines, because I'll have the continuous duty solenoid in there, the fuse holder, and the diode. Very simple installation, very simple solution, and that'll help you wire up just about any aftermarket AC system that you want the condenser to have fan control, also working in conjunction with the control pack's fan control. So if you guys have any questions about that, I would say email me, comment, that kind of stuff. I don't want to get too deep into it until later on in the show when we cover all this Godzilla stuff. And that product's really not available yet, so I can't send you links and stuff like that. So next week, I'll probably go a little bit further in depth with it on that one. So let's see. Ryan Merrill has joined us. Ryan's got some experimental parts on the way to him that also involve oil pressure. Yeah, those two 1/8-inch MPT ports, not a whole lot of people mention this, and they're always worried about it, is oil temperature. If you're going to run an oil temp gauge, you want both 1/8-inch MPT ports on there. So if you're going to put an aftermarket sensor, the factory one, you have one more hole, then you can get oil temp. So, or you can feed turbos, that kind of stuff. Parker Go Lightly's in the house. Okay, Suekra, he asked a question about the E-Pass. He got it figured out, wired it up, knocked it out. I think I sent him some diagrams via email. I'm glad that worked out for you, brother. All right, so the Godzilla. A lot of different opinions out there on the Godzilla engine, and I'm going to start this segment by letting you know that I am a fan of the Godzilla engine. I think there's a lot of cool things about it. When you compare it to the Coyote, I think there's a lot of differences. So it's easy to hear what I'm saying tonight and say, hey, he's just a hater because they sell Coyote shit. The Godzilla engine really intrigues me because it's a big inch Ford. And if you like big inch engines, big floppy, loud engines, we got one. It's brand new. I just watched a video today from Harup. performance. They're in Australia. They build superchargers. They're a Ford house. And the guy that we're talking to in the engine dyno room kind of said it the best. What he said was, you know, if you're an old school guy and you like big cubic inches and you have a vintage vehicle, the Godzilla has so much appeal because not only is it that, but they've packed in all this new technology that you only wished you had in those engines that you favored this whole time. On top of that, there's a lot of support for it, and there's a lot of headroom in it, right? There's a lot of cool stuff. All the gear that you wanted in your big block Ford, it's there from the factory finally. 6-bolt main, big cylinder heads, 445 cubic inches. It's a torque monster. It can rev to 6,000 RPM. There's a lot of really cool stuff about it. So try to ignore the Coyote in a way, because the Coyote, efficiency-wise and displacement-wise, naturally there's going to be some deficiencies when you compare the two together. What we're going to talk about tonight, similarly to what we talk about with the Coyotes, are the swap solutions. Now, we've coined that phrase. That's in our logo, Coyote Engine Swap Solutions. And now I like hearing others in the industry use that for their swap components. So now there's Godzilla Swap Solutions. So you guys are welcome. I nailed it. So that's my phrase, and you guys are using it now. Feather in my cap. So anyway, Godzilla engine, 7.3 liter. The first thing when we're looking at the Godzilla versus the Coyote, as far as ease of installation, that's what we're focusing on. Ease of installation and the cost of those components, and what are the hurdles we have to jump to get to job one, to firing it up and driving it up and down the street. Now, the first thing the Godzilla has going against it is it's not in a performance car from the factory. It's in a Super Duty. It's in a F-Series truck, right? So we don't really know how much quicker the cars are going to be. It's kind of hard to gauge because we're used to seeing it in a Mustang and say, okay, well, a Gen 2, a Gen 3 car, let's see, they weigh 4,000 something pounds. My Fox is like 2,600 pounds. It's 440 ruble horsepower. It's 600 ruble horsepower. My 60 foot's this. Okay, I know what I'm going to get. I know it's going to be a ripper, right? We don't know that. There is no known sensation, quantity, sound to go off of. We see a lot of race cars being built. Paul's High Performance has one. Everyone's getting engines. They're basically getting paid to develop parts by getting free engines from the OEMs, because the OEMs aren't ready to release products. They're behind the 8-ball. On top of that, we don't have really a good factory transmission option. And when I say that, it doesn't mean that a 6R80 behind a Godzilla isn't going to be an option. That's going to be fine with standalone computers. And standalone computers seem to be ruling the roost when it comes to the Godzilla, unlike the Coyote. Coyote has Gen 1, Gen 2, 6R80. You know what it's supposed to drive like. You can go drive a factory car. Your buddy might have one. You may have already owned one. You have one in your F-150, and you know what to expect. You know what it's supposed to drive like. You know what the clunks are normal and which clunks are not normal, right? 10R80 is the same way. We go into 18 and up Mustang, and we got Gen 3, Coyote, 10R80. We have a baseline, which is in a Mustang, similar to what we're swapping. And I'm assuming that most of us have Fox bodies. Some of us have F-100s, vintage Fords, all that fun stuff. But we all know those cars and how they drive. Not a whole lot of us have Super Duties. Not a whole lot of us have Super Duties to the point where that's our performance go-to vehicle. So we don't have a performance baseline other than engine dynos, right? So we're looking at engine dynos, comparing numbers. And the Godzilla is a 445 cubic inch monster. And it's a torque monster at that. It can make a heap of power on the engine dyno, but we really don't have any real-world numbers other than like Paul's high-performance car, which is a gutted Cobra Jet with that's motor-plated with forward-facing headers and a manual valve body transmission, right? So it's not like in my car where I could say, hey, it drives like this, it does this, this, and that, blah, blah. On top of that, not a whole lot of those cars that are being released into the wild so far that we see on YouTube, all these project cars, not a whole lot of them have AC and power steering. So there's still a long road to go to have everything available to you, similar to what we see even with the Coyote. And as you can see, we're still innovating stuff. So I support every single company that's making parts for it. And there's a couple of them out here that I've never even heard of that are making some really cool stuff. But they're hurdles. They're big hurdles that they're having to jump. And it's fitment, where the Godzilla has the advantage of being kind of a skinny engine, right? We don't have to cut the towers out of my vintage Ford. Fox body, we don't have to do that anyway, so it's really no big improvement, but The bitch is tall. The bitch is tall and she's deep. She's got a low oil pan because there's a jack shaft with an oil pump in the oil pan, and then the throttle body is the tallest part of the engine, and it's all the way at the front. So hood clearance is an issue. I talked to Team Z today. They do have a K member. It is readily available. The thing's, $435. I'll show you some real quick. Zach Anderson, by the way, hopping in there with a super chat, said he got his ultimate headers in today, man. Would you suggest using the supplied Cometic gaskets or some OEM MLS? No, you can use those Cometic ones. Those will work. I would try to use your factory hardware. That's for sure. Thanks for all your help along the way. You're welcome. Absolutely. I was glad those got out and got to you when they just came in. I made sure that we ordered 3 sets. 2 of them came in because one got drop shipped. I made sure one of them was yours. So use the Cometic gaskets or the factory gaskets. I think the Cometics MLS, very similar in construction and durability. Try to reuse your studs. I always like reusing studs, even if you got to slit the the flange to get them in there. Do that. Even if you have to remove a stud or use a bolt here and there, try to use a majority of the studs to get that installation done if you can. All right, so anyway, we're getting into and thank you, Zach, again. Team Z. All right, so this is a photo of the Team Z K member with a Godzilla engine in there. Now, the Godzilla engine in the photo, well, it has a stock oil pan. No big deal, right? Now, they had to move the mounting point of the steering rack down, I think 1.5 inches to 2 inches. They're adjustable mounts at that point. This may not have been the factory, the end all. This was like when they were mocking stuff up, that kind of stuff. But you do have to modify the oil pan. And when we say modify the oil pan, not grinding. You literally have to cut a section of it out and weld in like a 90-degree piece of aluminum to make sure you clear the hoop and the rack. So it's not for the weak fabricators out there. You're probably going to find that some guys out there are going to offer some sort of exchange, or they're going to sell you an aftermarket oil pan. There's a company called 417 Motorsports that today I saw was being discussed online, and they have a fabbed oil pan that's on the way. And here is an installation photo of it with the Team ZK member. And as you can see, it's all fabricated, nice, solid, thick billet rail, and it has the kick up, so you maybe have a better chance of mounting the rack as high as you can to make sure your bump steer stack isn't crazy. Now, Frank at Team Z Motorsports told me that bump steer really isn't an issue with it. I would think that there's going to be some sort of an issue, because my understanding is on my car, well, if I lower the rack, the control arms are kind of going up, and then you want that stuff. You just need to measure it and make sure it's right for your car. You don't want a car that if you hit a reflector, it does a 360 down the road. So keep that all in mind as we move that rack around, that your bump steer definitely has to be in check. Now, all these are set up for solid motor mounts. So big cam, big aggressive idle, solid motor mounts. You're going to get that Fox body head jiggle at the light, which is very appealing, I would say. Very masculine, very USA all the way. May not be what you want, but that's what we're talking about. We don't have a whole lot of that feedback out there to really make these decisions yet and know what's what. Here's another picture of that oil pan from 417 Motorsports. No pricing has been released. This version, they say, does have to use a remote oil filter, so you do have that expense to factor in, which is something that you also have to factor in sometimes with the Coyotes. Sometimes we can't use the factory oil filter housing, so you got to do a remote system, and we sell those components as well, so you can find those solutions. It looks like construction's like dead nuts. I mean, it's beautiful. There's a rear sump pan. But they did have to do something with the oil pump. Now, I see the factory oil pump like girdle there. And there's a billet piece here with a different scoop on it. They didn't really go into description on the post in the Godzilla Swap that if there's a Godzilla Swap group out there and it was posted in there. They didn't really go into all the particulars of this component. The other thing that I found recently, and listen, I got a little off track there when I was reading some of the posts, but I look at that oil pan and see what's going on there, and I may be wrong, but I see probably $800 to $1,000 in a pan, right? So that's something to consider if you have to do it. So we got a Team ZK member, $435. If you want a chromoly, it's another $120. And where they mount the engine, if you're trying to clear a stock hood, you better change the intake manifold or put a really big cow hood, because the stock intake manifold is going to be sticking that thing straight up in the air. Now, Gumby just said something interesting. He said he found a company that makes a really shallow pan that's only 5 quarts. Gumby, post up who it is. I'd like to keep tabs on all these things and put them in my notebook as solutions become available, but hopefully that works okay. I mean, that seems really light on oil. Now, if you're racing, I guess that's okay, but you know, dry sump is something I keep hearing about because the oil pump is such a problem. And it's an unknown quantity, right? We just don't know how it's all going to work forever. Now, the engine builders are salivating because I got 6-bolt main, I got 7.3. The bore spacing is better than the aftermarket blocks, all that shit. Great. But we're not all building pro mod engines. We're not all motor plating our car. What does it do stock? And the latest video from Higher Up was really cool because they just they took it easy. They didn't get into tearing it down and showing you all the engineering specifics and selling it all these different things. They showed you what it did stock. And on that one, they were using a Fuel Tech standalone, and they put a GT350 throttle body on it. So obviously Fuel Tech's in the game. I know Holley's going to be in the game, and we know that OBR is already in the game. Now, some of those other, like Holley, has controls for like 4R70W and stuff like that, which is pretty cool because then at least there's a path to maybe having a transmission engine powertrain controller, because Ford Performance has not released their control pack. And I think when they do release a control pack, most likely it's not going to be a factory setup, because from the factory you got a 10R140. You're probably not going to be running that transmission. But a 10R80 is really cool. Keeps it up in the power band, right? But remember, RPMs, 6,000. That's about it, unless you change the cams and change springs and all this stuff, change intake manifold. 6,000 RPM, you're pretty much done on this engine. So that RPM that we're used to seeing from the 10R80 and a Coyote, where we're hovering around 7,500, 8,000 RPM, we're going to be doing all that down at 6,000 RPM, just keeping that engine there, letting it sing. So it's going to be different. So experience, again, what it sounds like. It's going to be different than the Coyote in a lot of different phases. So we're talking about the standalone. OBR, they have pricing already. Now you can buy an OBR control pack. Actually, time out. Before we go on that, we're going to show you another oil pan situation. Where is it? Okay, this is from a company called Indy Power Products, and they were on Revan Evans' channel, Evan Smith, who's been doing some great coverage with Mike Wolf at Willis Racing on the Godzilla, showing you all the step of the way. They've really been leading the information that's been coming out. And he was on there, and they came out with a system that gets rid of the oil pan the oil pump in the oil pan, which is really intriguing because I think that's going to really open up things. But knowing that, I know there's going to be a big cost involved. Now, what he did is he removed the factory oil pump, the girdle structure that holds it, and then they basically moved it into the timing cover. So in his kit, you're getting a timing cover, an oil pump, a Georoto oil pump that runs off the camshaft similar to the factory oil pump, and then it has provisions for an accessory drive. Now, by doing that, he also allows you to have choice of oil pan, and it's very, very shallow. You can do front sump or rear sump. We haven't seen a front sump oil pan yet, because that's what the vintage guys are really going to need to make this work, but they're very, very shallow. So there's a pan rail, and then you can bolt on different oil pans, and they're all very shallow, and I think they're all factory capacity, if not more. So here's a look at it. This is the IPP, Indy Power Products. I believe I'm saying their name right. And this is what they've done. Now, what you see here also is their intake manifold that has looks like a Holley EFI throttle body on it. Jim, I believe his name is Jim Ryder from IPP, told me that his original concept in making this timing cover and messing with that oil pump was literally to cast it and put a distributor in it, so that you wouldn't need a standalone at all. You can basically run a regular ignition, a carburetor, this intake manifold, and go. Which to me is an intriguing concept, because we've never really seen a whole lot of modular engines really go carbureted and that be, a definite way to go, a big improvement. There is some simplification to it. There is definitely a feather in its cap when it comes to that. And if that's the stuff that you understand and that's what you want to continue to do, it's hard to really convince people otherwise. But obviously, we know that fuel injection has its upside. It's what everyone's gone to. It obviously has all the control. But today, with today's standalones and maybe even something like this with a Holley EFI on there, man, you would end up with total control of the entire engine. I know that the fuel tech system in the Harup video did have control of the VCT, according to the guy in the video. So that's pretty cool. I think all of them are going to want to do that because he was able to pick up power with it. But what you see here looks pretty uniform. It looks good. It looks like a traditional V8, maybe on the lines of like a street rod system. Alternators up top and tight, power steering pump, good location there. I would say the only thing tricky then would trying to run a high pressure hose from there across the engine down to the steering rack, but whatever. That's something we deal with now with like KRC kits and stuff like that. But you're going to get a timing cover. You cannot run the factory Godzilla water pump, so you're going to be using, I think he told us it was like a 94 to 98 Thunderbird water pump. I don't know if the tensioners are factory. I think you get those as well. An ATI balancer is part of the kit. You have to use a Power Master, an aftermarket alternator. It's not using the Godzilla alternator. It's not using the Godzilla power steering pump. It's set up for a GM Type 2, and then it'll have provisions for Sandin SD7 compressor. So none of the factory accessories get used down to the water pump and even the balancer, to my understanding. But again, I'm not Jim Ryder. I'm not IPP. If you have specific questions for that, you may want to contact them directly. But that is what I remember speaking with him. Also, as you can imagine, there's no real adaptation here to any of the blowers that may come available on the market. Obviously, they can be made, just like we did. But right off the bat, NA only. And then we'll see where things end up. Whipple, Harup, TVS, everything, whatever. I know ProCharger and Vortec are making stuff too. So that'll probably be a little bit easier since most of them are getting motor plated. See you later, Alfredo. So this is what they're doing here now. If I remember, Jim is saying, price range is going to vary. I'll show you some more pictures of it. This is the timing cover raw, and there, other than the cat looking back at you, on the bottom right of your screen, you're seeing the georotor pump that is of their design. These guys have a lot of inroads with NASCAR and really high performance engines, so they packed in a really good oil pump. And I think his base kit is really just to run the alternator and get for a race engine. And that system, he said, probably going to be in the $3,500 to $4,000 range. Here's a picture of it, kind of in development on an engine stand. Get an idea of where things in there. You can kind of see the oil pan rail, the bottom of the timing cover, and then there'll be different oil pans that bolt to the bottom of it. By the time you probably get all your accessories and brackets, oil pans, fitment, all that stuff from them, you probably are going to be in the, I would say, probably $4,000 to $5,500 range. So it's a big step. I mean, it answers a lot of the questions that exist for the Godzilla, but it does come with, unfortunately, a hefty price tag. You're getting a lot of money, a lot of product for your money. That's for sure. And it answers all those questions for you. And on top of that, it makes the engine look a little bit more appealing. Now, from the factory, the Godzilla does have power steering. It does have an alternator. It does have an AC compressor. Those AC compressors, similar to the Coyotes, aren't really designed to work specifically with aftermarket AC systems. 101R2R, glad you can join us, brother. So the Sandin SD7 compressor, older compressors, are going to be more fitting for aftermarket AC systems and older AC systems. So we're working on a Sandin SD7 bracket for the Godzilla. We already have it designed. It's going into quoting and machining very, very soon. Then we'll work on getting another engine here in-house and then figuring out our belt lengths and stuff like that, which I think we already have. So we'll have a simple solution to put an AC compressor on a Godzilla without having to do all this stuff in case you're going to use your stock power steering pump and alternator. Now, the power steering pump that the Godzillas have, very similar to the modular Ford power steering pump. We know that. There might be some adaptations to maybe put a GM Type 2 pump on it and use a stock timing cover. But it seems like a lot of guys are making timing covers for these things, which we're not used to with Coyotes. The only time we're switching timing covers is like with our speed drive where we need that idler pulley. We're not making aftermarket timing covers. But here's another cool product that IPP makes is these valve covers. Man, that's really nice. It looks great. I mean, it looks solid. It looks appealing, I would say. I wouldn't be upset if that was in my engine bay. But you start adding up some of these things, and I know, because I hear the complaints and I see them. I like the comments when they complain about pricing. I hear the comment, $750 for just brackets. Come on, PBH. Here's an accessory drive that's potentially $6,000. That's a lot. And it's not something that you have to do. It is an option. There will be other options, I would imagine, coming out in the aftermarket. But this is one that is set forth and has been announced. I haven't seen it many more. There's a factory option, which obviously could be affordable. But this is one of the products. These are one of the solutions that are available. And we have to look at it and see what they are. That's why I reached out to these guys to know what the viability is, who's the target market. And I think this here is something that prices itself out from a lot of the guys, because a crate engine, I think, is only in the $7,000 to $8,000 range. Yeah, you can find one used, but if you want to have some badass shit like this kit, that's a hefty price. You're into dry sump territory, which again, it's race car stuff. And what's happening right now, the big push for the engines to get into motion have been in race cars, right? So we got race cars, race cars, race cars. We don't have any street cars to go off of. One of the more intriguing videos will be when somebody puts one in a bone stock, let's say a Fox body, and drops a bone stock Godzilla out in there, put some drag radials on their pony wheels, goes out with regular control arms, full weight with AC and power steering, and starts beating the shit out of it and seeing what it does. That'll be very interesting, because that's going to be a little bit more telling to what I would say 75-80% of our clientele is looking for, because they don't typically want to buy that $7,000 crate motor and then have to put the same amount of money into an accessory drive, I would think, and then they still have stock power, and they're going to put 8-10 pounds of boost to it, and from what we understand, that is territory to go ahead and rebuild it, and I got to rebuild the engine, and these things add up. Daniel Green is back in the house. Thank you again, brother. Big super chat. No comment, no question, just supporting the channel, man. I really, really appreciate that. Last week, you set the record for the biggest donation. You're the first one to hit the limit. Unreal, man. That'll always always go down in the history, in the annals of PBH Live. And this is episode 50. This is episode 50. The big one. The anniversary show. And I think you're going to win with this super chat as well. So thank you very much. While we're saying that Daniel's shaming us peasants. Listen, you don't have to blow up the super chat. You can do as low as $2.99. And that as well is appreciated. You're going to get just as much attention as Daniel. So you don't have to do it. It's humbling. We appreciate it. We appreciate anything you donate to the channel. It's going to help us build the channel a little bit more and get out to more events and come meet you guys. So anyway, so yeah, Indy Power, Team Z, 417 Motorsports. Okay, the OBR standalone. That is the one that's available on the market right now. You can buy it. The price is on their website. It's $3,500 to start. $3,500 to start. Now, $3,500 doesn't include like a wideband and stuff like that. By the time you really buy it the way you want to buy it, it's going to be $4,000. Control packs are going to end up market-wise, retail-wise, above $2,000 because of the cost increases that all the manufacturing has experienced. And you've seen the price hike from Ford Performance already. It's reflected on our website, and availability is a problem. When availability is low and demand is high, prices go up. So we're working on something to try to alleviate that, and it is in the pipeline. It's coming. And Daniel Green. I shouldn't have said anything, man. You're crazy. So Daniel Green has now donated the maximum $500 to the show. Wow. I think I'm probably going to put Daniel's face on the car. Up like, maybe I'll put it on the windshield like Fig Newtons and Talladega Nights. Thank you, brother. I really appreciate that. It's humbling. Thank you. Everyone push the couches to the wall, through the walls, into the neighbor's townhouse, whatever you got going on. Here's to you, brother. That's crazy, man. Crazy, man. Crazy. So the OBR standalone has the ability to do transmission control, but that's not something they've developed yet. And speaking with them, we know that they have limited ability to do customer support. So my fear when a manufacturer says that is if there's a bunch of people with it and there's a problem, repairs and in-depth stuff is going to take a while to get figured out, and we're not used to that. We got a little used to it with COVID and stuff being delayed, like headers and stuff like that, but we're not. This is technology, right? Text me, email me, FaceTime me. Can I download it? Can I download it out? Can I 3D print it? So I worry about that particular and the expandability of it and what they can keep up with, especially when somebody like Holley is going to drop a system and it's going to be around $2,000. And if they do that, then unless you're Motec or Fuel Tech, it's going to be hard to demand those kind of prices and stay in the fray, especially if you don't have any other expandability, automatic transmission controls. I would think that Holley by now probably would have had the 6R80 figured out, but they only got the 4SNW and some of the GM transmissions. Somebody mentioned 10R80 standalone. Haven't really seen anything come out. I know they're working on it, but again, the 6R standalones haven't been completely lights out, and I fear that 10Rs may be similar, where they're good. In some cases, they're good enough. In some cases, they're exceptional. And in some cases, people are left with a lot to want, right? They have some gray areas they just can't figure out. So I hope that all these standalones come available. And standalones are something that we've even considered. And who knows? Who knows what happens? In the future, we may have our own. But because stock computers, eventually, they're going to be old. They're going to dry up, right? What happened to the Fox body A9Ls? You don't find them everywhere. They're worth a bunch of money, and then it's like buying a Nintendo. The thing you're paying $400, $600 for a piece of technology that's 20-something years old, and you hope works. And if it doesn't work, you're on your own. So, standalones. That's for longevity. I think that's going to be something that everyone has to consider down the road, because eventually Ford Performance is going to stop making control packs. They're going to run out of components, and that's an issue. That's an issue if you're a fan of the engine and you want to continue that engine, considering that we're probably looking at the last big V8 push from a manufacturer like Ford. We just had the Lightning announcement kind of made. So electric trucks, we got Mach-E, we got the Power Boost F-150, which is a hybrid unit with a 3.5. How long are they going to keep making V8s? GM announced that they're making a big-ass V8. Similar to what Ford did, because apparently now they got emissions figured out on these big things, and they can give you a hunk of engine with a lot of torque, which works great for their fleet vehicles and their motor homes and all the vehicles that get modified with big heavy chassis, cabin chassis stuff, and then trickles down into the performance world. But it won't. I don't know. GM probably will put it in a performance vehicle, but everyone's already announced they're going electric. That's what's happening. That's what's being subsidized. That's what the big push is, electric. So I don't, unless there's something happening that I don't understand, which most likely there is for all of us. Obviously, there's something in the background that's making this big push, because not everyone's lining up going, oh man, I can't wait for an electric car. They kind of like their cars right now, and they're gas. So, Suekra, thank you very much, brother, for that super chat, donating to the channel. If you have any questions, obviously post them up. Jason Friedberg says, here's $10 for a soda pop after you finish your long evening you have ahead of you. Thank you very much. I got a few more of these at home. I have spent all my free time in the last 2 weeks building a screen enclosure at my house. So hopefully get that done and be able to enjoy. We got a cold front coming our way. Maybe able to enjoy the patio this weekend. Got rid of my old barbecue. Looking at getting a Blackstone. Make some stir fry. That kind of stuff. So that's what's going on here. And then tomorrow night after work, I'm heading over to Mike's shop, our technician, and we're going to finish cutting up my 8.8 because we need to update everybody on that full floater. We're going to do a video on how we cut it, where we cut it, and how we measured for the axles to order it, and how we're going to measure for the machining of the housings once we have that. So that's going to be an interesting video because you're going to get a little insight into a little bit of chassis building, driveline stuff, and if it's something you're interested in doing in your own car, it's kind of a little bit of a roadmap to see what you're going to be up against. Hanlon Motorsports is in the house. Powered by the Hour for the win. Hey, Frank. Hey, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. So let's ask Andrew Hanlon. Hey, Andrew Hanlon. I have a Godzilla. I know the QuickTime bell housing should work. It has a modular Ford footprint in the back bolt pattern for transmission. What transmission are you going to sell us to handle upwards of 500 foot-pounds of torque from the factory, if not more, if I decide to put a blower in it? If I put a blower in there, that hair-up video that I just watched, and I keep referencing that because I just watched it today. I know there's Whipples and all that stuff out there too, but I'm just saying that one in particular because it's fresh in my mind. They were making over 700 foot-pounds of torque with a 2.6 TVS on an engine dyno, preloaded. So when I call Hanlon Motorsports and say, hey man, I got a Godzilla, it's got a supercharger on it, it's going to be making 700 foot-pounds of torque, what are we going to put behind it? So Andrew, fire away. Let me know what we're going to make up for the guys who want that grunt and they want a manual. Are we doing a TKX? Are we doing a 56? Are we doing a 56 Magnum, a 6060? Doing a 3550, 3650? What are we doing? What are we going to put behind there that's going to handle it? Daniel, what parts list are you at? Email me directly because there's two Franks here. I'm Frank Perdomo. There's Frank Pezzo, and sometimes we get mixed up. So if you're waiting on something from Frank Pezzo and you're asking me, I can go ahead and take the message and make sure he gets it out to you and work with him to get it to you. So email me, brother. Whatever you're waiting on, email me so we can get you taken care of. Okay? Making notes. We'll wait on Andrew to chime in. Let's see here. Suekra. Frank, has anybody put a 2018 plus digital gauge cluster in a Coyote swap for a Gen 2, Gen 3 motors? That might be hard to do mainly because you don't have the BCM. I believe the BCM is going to be a big reason why that's not going to work well for you. On top of that, we don't have programming control of the instrument cluster. So any message center that's looking for like ABS, it's looking for all these different things that are part of the vehicle. If you don't have that stuff hooked up, you're probably going to end up with a slew of messages and error codes that are going to light that digital cluster up. So it's easy in a factory car because it's going to communicate that stuff still. In a swap, control pack doesn't have BCM. It's not communicating that stuff, but it's not necessarily shut off in the CAN bus. It's not sending dummy messages saying, hey, everything's okay, don't say any messages. They just shut off the components, so it's not triggering our code, but it's all still broadcasting and looking for information, and that's where your cluster is reading. That's what it's portraying on its display. So if it doesn't see it, it says, hey, it's unplugged, there's a problem. You know, we got an issue. Oh, here you go. You need to pin my email? Let's see here. Let's do Frank at PBHperformance.com. Boom. 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 It's pinned. Frank at PBH. Hopefully I spelled it right. Frank at PBHperformance.com. There we go. That's my email. You got it. Hanlon Motorsports chiming back in. Good question. I'd personally consider one of our modified 3650s because it will directly bolt up and not have to buy a bell housing. We can also do an aftermarket gear set to hold upwards of a and cliffhanger. Oh, Nestor's here. Car enthusiast. Longtime good customer of PBH, good friend Nestor in the house. Can we tell people that there's no gas shortage in South Florida and stop hoarding? I know, dude. I couldn't get gas before I got here. I'm at 1 mile to eat. My wife's on the way here. I got 2 5-gallon tanks in the back of my Expedition, and I'm going to be that guy waiting in line tonight and then getting fuel for her and then trying to fill up jugs. People are going to get pissed. And my car is basically stuck here at the shop. I may have to start Ubering until we get fuel. I don't know. There's an autocross Friday night. I don't have enough E85. I don't even know if I can get E85. Anyway, Hanlon finishes his message. He says, holds upwards of 1,000 horsepower, or we can do a T56 Magnum straight out of the box. Downfall with a TKO TKX is they are only rated for 600 foot-pounds. So obviously, to get more foot-pound out of the TKO TKX is you're going to have to need some upgraded shit inside, which makes it a little bit racier, I would suggest. He looks like T56 Magnum or the 3650s. Those 3650s, surprisingly, can handle a ton of power with the aftermarket modifications that these guys have. So that'd be kind of cool. Oh, Arthur has a question. Fuel pressure regulator supposed to be hooked up to a vacuum source on NA Coyote swap? No. What you want to do on an NA Coyote swap is you want static fuel pressure. That's how it's set up from the factory, but it's done through a returnless system. So you got an FPDM, you got the computer communicating with the pump, and basically it's making sure we have 58 PSI in the fuel rail, which is deadheaded, right? So in a Coyote swap, we're doing a return style system because we don't have that fuel pump control. Even though there's aftermarket versions out there, we're talking about the simplified return style version of this. And the easiest way to duplicate that 58 PSI is to use a fuel pressure regulator and a return line and then set it to 58 PSI and don't vary it. You don't want it to go up or down with engine. You want 58 PSI all the time. The only time you're going to hook a vacuum source to it or a boost reference is going to be when it's boosted. Then it's going to have to fluctuate and know when you're in boost, so it can add fuel pressure. Hopefully, that explains it perfectly for you and helps you get done what you're doing. While Horse 50 says, I'm thinking Godzilla now with a C6 for a 69 Torino. I measured my IRS rear I have. Plenty of room in the back of the Torino. Well, that'd be kind of cool. IRS in a Torino would be really cool, nonetheless. I'm not too well versed on C6s and C4s and FMXs and stuff like that, but I know they're used all through the racing world, so you can make them strong enough to handle the stuff. I would think if it's a street car, you kind of want a little bit more gearing, maybe some overdrive, maybe a C6 with a gear bender. That'd be kind of cool. What about a 4R70W with a gear bender? A 10R80 with a gear bender and have like 20 gears. It'll be like a CVT. Congratulations, Arthur. You nailed it, buddy. Good job. Oh, man. So tonight's been a good show. I want to remind everybody that, yes, we are on YouTube. Yes, subscriptions count. Notifications count. Comments count. And likes count. So if you can, take a moment and do all that stuff if you haven't done it already. On all these videos, if you can like them, if you can comment on them, even if you just say, hey, show, I was here. You know, whatever you got to do, that really helps me out. So if you can, please do it. It will really help me out. And give me some feedback. Feedback is always going to help us, even if I don't like it. If it's mean or you're critiquing me, I'm not doing something right. The mic's too loud. Colors, shit. You know, change your shirt, drink some better beer, whatever, man. Just let's keep the conversation going. That's what this is all about. And that's where we're going to find where we can help everybody, because everyone's doing something a little bit different, have a little bit different project, and we want to know what's going on. It keeps our finger on the pulse of what's happening out there. That's why I'm calling all these companies that I see come across with Godzilla stuff, because we need to kind of start putting this bad boy together. You know, what are going to be those core components? We know what they are for the Coyote. How's this going to come together? And this has just been a completely different rollout. It's completely different. We don't have a whole lot of factory components to go to knock it out of the park. We don't have a factory go-to that we're comfortable with to then even have a comparison to. So it's like 52 car pickup. We're going to throw in it 50 engines in the air and see what comes out of them. And so far it's been racing. How is that going to translate to street-minded cars? How are our components? How are we going to do that budget beater Godzilla swap? What's going to be that base number? We know with Coyotes we're going to spend 10 to 15 grand. Are there ways to even curb that? Yes. These Godzilla engines don't seem to be hitting the used market yet, but they will. Because, again, they're shoving them into fleet vehicles. Now, box trucks, U-Haul trucks, motorhomes, all of them are going to have them. So does that mean Midway Mustang, Palmetto Pony Parts, who was it? Parts Farm, Cleveland Powertrain, are they going to start lining up to buy regular cab F-250s to sell you an engine? What if there's no control pad? What if you have to use a standalone? What if you can't use a 10R140? What are they selling you? You're just going to want the engine. right? So let's say the engines are 3 or 4 grand. I mean, this is an expensive list right now. And again, this isn't the end of it. There's going to be more stuff that comes out. There's going to be more affordable stuff that comes out. But demand is going to drive that. And if it's expensive at the beginning and it takes a little bit of the wind out of the sails, you might have a little issue with parts being affordable. Coyotes are, they've become a standard swap engine. They're getting their way into everything. The Godzilla has the bones for it. But that oil pump is a hurdle. That intake is a hurdle. And the fact that there's very limited OEM support for it is a hurdle. So, and on top of that, it's not in a performance vehicle from the factory, at least not yet. There's rumors it's going to end up in a Mustang, but by then the Mustang might be a damn, Mustang 3500 dually. I don't know. They could start putting Mustangs on everything. The Mustang Transit, So anyway, great show tonight. I really enjoyed it. I was really fired up. Tomorrow night, we will cut up that 8.8 differential, and we'll make another video for you. Again, we got those new products coming out, 3 of them. Oil pump, the oil pan kit we've already announced is available on our website. The oil pressure sender is available for pre-order because the Dakota Digital ones are dried up completely. And that kit with the continuous duty solenoid and the diode in case you want to trigger your fans with your AC system before the control pack does it and you don't fry your control pack. So all that stuff for you coming from PBH and more. The best is yet to come. Stick around. We got a lot of cool shit coming out. That's gonna big feather in our hat. So I want to thank all you guys for the support. Daniel Green, Zach Anderson, Suekra, Jason Friedberg. All you guys are great for the super chat, and everyone else in the regular chat. My boys, as Alex calls them, the peasants. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here tonight. We'll be back next Wednesday with an update on some of those products. Maybe we'll find some more Godzilla stuff to talk about, some more Coyote Swap stuff to come out. Headers are still an issue. BBKs are still in back order. We do have ultimate headers, 6R80 and 10R80 headers, very limited quantity in stock. In stock for the UPRK members. If you're looking for something like that and you need it quick and you're waiting on something, know that we have it. Call us, email me, whatever you got to do, and see if you can get your hands on a set of them. Okay? Okay. So, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you for being here tonight. Make sure you check out our website, pbhperformance.com. Follow us on social media. We already talked about YouTube. Call us Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 Eastern, 561-737-2331. And you can email us, info@pbhperformance.com. And you can email me directly, frank@pbhperformance.com. So thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate you being here tonight. And we'll see you next week. Sign the RPM Act. Let's do it. Now, where's this button? Where's end stream? There we go. Now we're ending it.